Hi, it's me again.
So I see. What now?
Did you happen to see a red sports car down on the road?
I caught a glimpse of a flash of red on the hill and heard the racket. Sure, it was an awful noise. A sports car, you say?
A Ferrari, to be exact.
A racing car? And what was it doing here? The poor fella must have been lost.
The driver of the Ferrari was involved in an accident.
Is that so?
Yeah, he knocked somebody down outside the bar.
What an idiot! How could a thing like that happen?
He was traveling too fast.
So fast he ran right under the car?
I mean, the car was traveling too fast.
But you'd have thought the idiot could have heard it coming.
Maybe you know the guy who was hit by the Ferrari. His name is Sean Fitzgerald.
Oh, I know him all right. That's me nephew, the idiot responsible for the stacking of my hay cart. Was he killed by the car?
Oh no, but he has been abducted.
Well, that's a relief now.
Aren't you going to look for your nephew?
What for? From what you say, it's too late.
Well, you could report the matter to the police.
Better not. Besides, what could they do?
Well, they could mount a search.
They have only the one bicycle between them. In a question of superior acceleration, I put me money on the Ferrari.
I think you ought to know exactly what Sean has gotten himself into.
I'm not sure I want to know.
But you're his uncle, his own flesh and blood.
You're right, but what can I do? If I'm not here to guard it, some idiot might try to climb the haystack. What a moral dilemma. Stay here and guard this potentially lethal agricultural construction, or to go off in search of the prodigal nephew, the very man responsible for said hazard? It'll need some thinking about.
Why, there's no problem.
You're right. Why didn't I think of it before? We'll demolish the haystack.
You don't have to demolish the haystack to go look for Sean. I'll stay here in your place and warn anyone who's silly enough to climb it.
Marvellous! I think I should start me inquiries in the bar.
He strode off in the direction of McDevitt's bar, leaving me to contemplate the stack of hay. The stack of hay stopped, short of the top of the wall. Even if I stretched as far as I could, the wall was out of reach. What I needed was a slice or two of Alice's Wonderland. I pushed my fingers into the narrow crack. It went back several inches into the rock. I inserted the end of the lifting key in the mortarless crack and gave it a firm shove. It remained lodged in the wall, jutting out to form a step. It was the fiercest, meanest-looking old goat I'd ever laid eyes upon. The top of a ladder rose out of the squarely dug hole. It was a rusted piece of iron, maybe part of a plow or something. Hey, Billy! The animal fixed on me with an evil glare. Behind the malice and resentment, there was a cool intelligence. How you doing, boy? I felt as threatened as I'd been by the assassin and his goons in Paris. Hey, Billy. The goat responded with The rope by which the goat was tethered had become tangled on the old plowshare.
Hey, Billy.
The goat was tangled. It was a statue which had fallen from its place on the wall. 5 fingers of stone projected from the back of the carving. I placed my fingers and thumb into the holes in the wall. Nothing happened. There was a pattern of 5 holes arranged on the wall. They'd been drilled there deliberately. The statue was too heavy to lift. It overbalanced into the sand. As I swung the stone upright, I noticed it had left a pattern of holes in the sand. The bench had probably been used by Pegram and his archaeological team. The only object on the table which interested me was a small sack. As I dipped my fingers into the soft white powder, I realized what it was. Plaster of Paris. I'd used it in kindergarten to make casts of animal paw prints. I sprinkled the plaster on the sand until the holes were filled. I smoothed the plaster level with the sand. It was my first experience of home improvement. The patch of sand where the statue had fallen was covered with a dense sprinkling of plaster. The farmer was drinking and chatting with his pals as if nothing had happened. Maybe abduction had replaced cattle raiding as their national pastime. The faucet creaked, coughed, and spewed out a stream of rusty-colored water. I held the towel under the faucet and soaked it with water. I shut off the faucet as tight as I could, but it kept on dripping. The trickle of water was quickly absorbed by the plaster. A lump of hardened plaster lay on the sand at my feet. The plaster cast was a pretty neat replica of the back of the stone, complete with protruding fingers. I eased the solid piece of plaster from the sand. Underneath, it had formed a perfect copy of the statue. The hardened plaster cast fitted snugly into the 5 matching sockets. There was a soft thud, then silence. A flight of stairs led down into darkness.
So, where did you stay last night?
At McDevitt's. I got to drinking with Doyle and a couple of the guys.
That explains why you look so ill today. Did you get any sleep at all?
Not much. I had to share the room with another guy.
Did he snore?
Hardly. He was dead.
And you say Pegram has disappeared?
Without a trace. But my visit wasn't a complete waste of time.
Pegram's gem?
The Templar's gem. Whoever Jacques Marquet is, he's in for a disappointment.
Jacques Marquet?
He's the guy who should have collected the gem from Fitzgerald.
I've been reading about Pegram in this magazine.
The media got its claws on him.
Yeah, if I was his agent, I'd get him to lose the pipe.
That dig must have been pretty important to him. He resigned his chair at Durham University to go to Ireland. And now he's disappeared. See what you can find out about Professor Pegram.
I'll speak to the university. What are your plans?
I want to find out who, what, or where Montfaucon was. All I've got to go by is the name and a picture of a hanged man. Let's take another look at the manuscript. That's the gem that Pegram found in Lochmarne. That's the tripod in the Croon Museum. There's a woman looking at her reflection in a mirror, but the reflection has 3 hideous faces. There's a guy with a sword and a bull. Between them is a gem supported by a tripod. The Night Scroll bears a phrase in Latin. Through my teachings, you will be enlightened. What do you know about Professor Pegram?
I've seen a television program, Pegram's Past. He's written a book, The Crusader Families of Ireland.
I can't sit here all day, much as I'd like to.
Okay. Don't forget to look for Lobinot at the Croon Museum. And why don't you see if Rousseau has heard anything?
Okay, Anything else I can do for you while I'm out? Shopping, a trip to the laundromat?
Just take care of yourself.
He was a thin-faced, pallid guy with a questionable taste in outlandish clothes. My mother used to dress like that. I beg your pardon. Are you André Lobineau?
That's me. You want my autograph?
No, I was told you may be able to help me.
Help?
My name is George Stobart. I'd like your professional opinion.
Well, okay, shoot.
Does the name Montfaucon mean anything to you?
Sure, it was the most grisly spectacle in Paris until the Revolution.
A public toilet?
Montfaucon was the place of execution for many thousands. A dark temple of death, with row upon row of arches, each one framing a grim exhibit. Scores of rotting corpses swung on creaking rope, while the crows devoured their flesh.
That explains the image of the hanged man. I found a reference to Montfaucon in Ireland, in a village called Lochmarne.
Lochmarne? That's where Pegram was digging.
That's right. He'd left the excavation before I arrived. Where was the site of Montfaucon?
To the northeast, near the Canal Saint-Martin, but there's nothing there now. The old gibbet was torn down during the Revolution.
I'd like your opinion on a medieval manuscript.
Vraiment? Do you have it with you?
No, it's too fragile. And besides, there are certain people who'd stop at nothing to get their hands on it.
Intriguing. Do you have a copy of the text?
There isn't much. Only a few Latin phrases. I was kind of hoping you'd help decipher the pictures.
Without seeing the manuscript, that's a tall order.
Just tell me one thing. What does the image of two men riding on the same horse suggest to you?
The Knights Templar. Does the Templar seal appear on this manuscript? I'd love to see that for myself.
Can you tell me anything about the Knights Templar?
I sure can, Georgie. Soldiers, diplomats, mercenaries, monks, bankers, you name it, the Templars fit the bill. The greatest fighting force in Christendom, the militia of Christ.
Jeez. How did the Templars get their name?
From the building in which they set up their headquarters. The King of Jerusalem gave them part of a mosque on the Temple Mount. It was said to have been the site of the original Temple of Solomon. The order became known first as the Knights of the Temple, and later as the Knights Templar.
You're a mine of information, André.
Glad to be of help, Georgie.
How come the Templars became so wealthy?
There was a constant stream of new recruits to their ranks, many from noble families. They were required to swear a sacred oath of poverty, chastity, and obedience. So, their money, goods, and lands were donated to the order. The Templars soon held land in France, Scotland, England, Spain, most of Europe, in fact. The poor Knights of Christ became the wealthiest power in Christendom.
Is it true the treasure of the Knights Templar was never found?
Who knows? So little knowledge of what really happened remains. Or, if it does, the truth has never been made public.
What do you mean by that?
The Templars have attained mythological status, like the King Arthur of the Britons. There are people even now who say the Templars still exist.
Do you think that's likely?
No, not for a minute.
The manuscript is being looked after by a friend.
In Paris?
Yeah, not far from here, in fact.
Well, just give me the address and I'll come round and take a look.
I'm not so sure about that. Maybe I should check with her first.
A female friend?
Yeah, she's a woman. Maybe it was my imagination, but I noticed a predatory look in his eye. Suddenly, this friendly historian had turned into the big bad wolf. This friend who has the manuscript?
Oui, the anonymous girlfriend.
She lives at 361 Rue Jarry.
Ah, I know it well. I'll drop by. Just as soon as I can.
Thanks for your help, Andre.
You're welcome.